Happy Halloween, boys and girls. I've got a story to tell you. A tale to spin. A tale about a documentary film. That's one of the scariest films I've ever seen. It's a fine suspense film. And it basically kick-started the documentary-style horror film genre. And I'm talking about, of course, the Blair Witch Project. Now, this kind of film gets a lot of heat, a lot of hatred, but is it honestly worth hating that much? Is it really genuinely a bad film? Well, I don't think so. And I'm gonna explain why. Let's go for a ride, boys and girls. A dive down into the deep and darkness. For I'm about to explain why horror films work so well. It all has to do with what we don't see, what we can't understand. Horror is about the unknown and about what lurks within the dark. If you don't know anything about the Blair Witch Project, I'll explain. It's a 1990s documentary-style horror film. It's centered around 3 student filmmakers that try to go into the woods in Maryland while shooting a documentary about the town's local legend known as the Blair Witch. But they get lost in the woods, and bit by bit they start to snap at each other, turn on each other. Their nerves begin to fray. They start to go sort of almost insane. And unfortunately, that's when even freakier stuff starts happening. Because not only do they start going in circles, even though they walk south for a good 4 miles and stuff like that, strange stick figures start popping up around them. Rock piles that are meant to indicate graves. Somebody attacks their tent. They hear cackling in the woods. All sorts of strange things are going on. And the film ends on an ambiguous note, leaving it up in the air just what the heck actually happened. Needless to say, the sequel was not very good. I'll tell you that. But other than that, the film enjoyed great commercial and critical success. It spawned books. It spawned a video game. It even spawned a very funny cartoon parody, the Scooby-Doo Project, which is probably the greatest thing ever. So, needless to say, the Blair Witch Project has in fact left its mark on our culture and I'm not just talking pop culture, but on movies. It's, well, I believe a good film. And I'm going to explain why. It's not just because of the other films that it helped to influence, like Cloverfield and Paranormal Activity and the other films that started the sort of shaky cam, home camera style video craze. No, it's not just about influencing that genre. It's about so much more than that. And I'm going to explain why.
Yeah, it's a story my grandmother used to tell us all.
The entire film is about building up atmosphere and mood. And this, to me, is what real horror is meant to be about. It's about creating and immersing you in this elaborate environment in which anything can happen and pretty much anything will happen, and none of them are nice. I'd say that the opening is meant to introduce us to the crew, but it's really more about, as I said, establishing the mood and really getting right into what it is they're about to do. And what they start off with is explaining a bit about the Blair Witch legend. It goes back to a hermit who lived in the woods, Rustin Parr, who ended up killing 7 children in his house. he'd make one child stand in the corner, then another child stand in another corner, and then he'd kill the first kid in the corner, and then the second one. And he did this to 7 children before eventually turning himself in, saying a witch had made him do it. Now, there had also been other horrors that had gone on within the woods, so essentially the woods seemed to be haunted, and Rustin Parr, the hermit, lived in a house in the woods that was burned down after the parents lost their crap about him killing their kids. So our heroes decide to go check out interesting sites in order to learn more about, well, to immerse themselves in the mythology of the environment. And it does not go well, because from almost day one, strange things start to happen.
Been committed while each was alive and able-bodied enough to struggle.
You get too much ass smell in the night.
Yeah, okay, who wouldn't let me have a cigarette in the tent, but he's allowed to fart as much as he wants?
No,
I really don't think
never gave Mike any fart allowance.
So you heard noises last night?
So
See, the problem is I sleep like a fucking rock.
It was like there were 2 separate noises coming from 2 layers of space over here, and one of them was kind of like, one of them could have possibly been an owl, but the other one was like a cackling.
No way.
It was a total cackling, man.
If I heard a cackling, I would have shit in my pants.
Oh, what's that noise? Get the camera, get the camera. Huh? What is that?
Let's split up and check it out. No way, Jose!
Will someone go out there for a Scooby snack? Somebody! Anybody!
Like, are you out of your mind?
Despite all this, our brave heroes try to remain in high
It's
spirits.
a little warmer today, so this is the first time we're seeing Mike's chest. It's really hard to pick up on video, actually. Mike has really...
And for those of you wondering, yes, the dialogue was all improvised, much like my own reviews, so that makes this even more impressive.
My ass.
Look, it's fucking Uruguay
Actually,
right there.
it kind of looks like my chest. I'm a very hairy man.
Look, I think I see Bolivia. What killed this dead mouse? Witchcraft?
Ow! That is some serious mood whiplash. And so is this.
Okay, now we're trying to put the tent up before it gets too dark, so I'm going to keep rolling in case that spook appears. We've got to make sure we put the tent tarp on. Now we're putting the stakes up to hold the tent.
Will you please put the camera down, Velma? It might be easier without it.
Well, I don't want to miss anything.
Oh, I'm kind of trolling you. But so's this film, a little bit.
People told you? Oh yeah, there's a cemetery back in there.
I
We're
don't.
lost, admit that first, because...
We're not, I know we're not lost. Think of the joy of being in a really good film. Okay, I'm quiet.
Fun fact, that's what the director said to the actor. It's here that the crew reaches the cemetery, where Rustin Parr made 7 gravestones made of piles of rocks, similar to, well, that tale from the Bible. And naturally, Heather wants to get everything on film. But you might notice that they're a little bit on edge now.
You didn't just knock that over. Please tell me you didn't just knock that over. That's not very nice. Let me put it back. Can't be too careful.
It's around this time that Heather, Josh, and Mike really start getting on each other's nerves, and tempers begin to flare, nerves begin to fray, and they start bickering with each other over seemingly minor things.
Woke up this morning, just like 2 seconds ago, and there are piles of rocks outside of our tent. There are 3, actually. I don't have it. We have to go. I'm serious, I don't have it.
Are you fucking serious?
Fucking serious, I don't have the map, okay?
Heather, that is so not cool, man.
I know it's not cool.
That is so not cool.
I know it's not cool.
I mean, that's the fucking, like, least responsible thing you could have possibly done, man.
I know that.
Well, we're doing a pretty goddamn good job of being lost.
Well,
Because at this point, when you're not home today, when I'm not home today, people are gonna start noticing. Like, my girlfriend's definitely gonna notice that I'm not back today. And that I haven't fucking called. I mean, if I called, it would be one thing.
To be fair, under normal circumstances, that's not such a bad idea, but unfortunately, they're not in normal circumstances, and things are about to go from bad to worse. You remember how they had lost the map? Well, take a listen.
I kicked the... I'm sorry, it's fucked up. It's fucked up, but I kicked that fucking map into the creek yesterday. It was useless. I kicked that fucker into the creek.
I fucking hope he's kidding.
Wow!
Mike?
Holy shit.
I really fucking hope he's
Mike, are you
kidding.
kidding?
I really fucking hope he's
Mike, are
kidding.
you fucking kidding?
You've got to be kidding me.
Mike,
You have got to fucking be kidding me.
fucking
Get
kidding?
the fuck off me, man!
Fuck, are you out of your fucking mind?
Oh, not out of my mind.
Mike!
Mike was probably thinking along the lines of this.
Me too. Give me the map. Like, how can you read this map? It's just a dotted line and an X.
Now, you might remember the little rock piles that had been put around the campsite. Well, now there's something else, because now things get even creepier. Having lost the map, having found rocks placed almost ritualistically outside their tent, and finding strange stick-like figures hanging from the woods around them, our poor heroes are now understandably at the very end of their rope, for the most part. And this next scene does not help matters, because there's now definitely something out there.
Jesus Christ, look, it's... Oh, Jesus Christ.
Let me get my jeans on. Take the video camera. No, get the dot ready.
Oh, damn. Oh, damn. Go, fucking go! Oh, God! God! Fucking shit! Fuck!
They spilled all my fucking water.
It looks like slime, man.
It's just water, man. It is slime. What the fuck is that?
Dude. Let's get the shit back.
When they manage to escape and go back, they find that their stuff has been kind of trashed, but Josh has it worst of all.
Relax.
Remember
Have we done
this.
everything here?
God send your grace on thee! As the twilight's last gleam.
Unfortunately, their good mood quickly fades when they realize they've been going around in circles and they're right back at the log that cracked when they tried to cross it. And yeah, a study in 2009 showed that people will, in fact, walk in circles if they don't have a compass, or if they're not going by landmarks or by the sun, or if they don't have a GPS. They'll just loop back in on themselves. So it might be easy to point and laugh and say, "Ha ha, you walked in circles, I'd never do anything that stupid." But yeah, you would. If you didn't have a compass, you'd walk in circles. So don't be so quick to judge.
It's not the same log. It's not the same log.
This movie is not so much about a witch, so much as the slow and utter destruction of the human spirit. Yeah. Essentially, our heroes, especially Josh, are kind of feeling a little bit like this.
Oh no. I'm coming apart! Oh, Mother of God, I'm coming apart!
And if you want more proof, well...
You can do better than that. Guys, we have things to prepare for here. Okay, here's your motivation. You're lost. You're angry in the wood, and no one here is here to help you. There's a fucking witch, and she keeps leaving shit outside your door. There's no one here to help you. She left little trinkets. You fucking took one of them. She ran after us. There's no one here to help you. We walked for 15 hours today. We ended up in the same place. There's no one here to help you. That's your motivation. That's your motivation.
You might have picked up on the not too subtle notion that Josh is kinda losing his mind and is kind of suffering from the worst mental breakdown out of all of the three. Heather and Mike are barely hanging on, don't get me wrong, but Josh seems to have completely flipped out and is like barely even there. He might have gone completely insane, and that's one way to read the film, that everything is a result of them going insane.
Josh! Josh!
Josh! Probably at the river or something.
If he was at the river, he could hear me from here.
And it's here where Josh goes missing.
Gotta wait for him to respond.
Do you remember what he said yesterday? What? About this shit on his back, about out. Josh!
Here again comes a scene in which there's not a lot shown at all. And there's not a lot heard, but everything that you do see and hear, it all implies something so horrible that your imagination instantly makes the connection and the lights go on. Here it is.
Should we look for him? Is it a trick? Josh?
Josh! Josh! Where's it coming from? Josh! Josh, where are you? Tell me where you are! Do you think that's them fucking with us?
Josh! Is it over here?
No, it's over here. Josh!
Later on in the morning, Heather looks outside to find more presents have been left for them. No, it's not a stone grave or anything like that, and no, it's not more stick figures. I mean, there are sticks, but no, it's not any of that. It's a bundle of sticks, and it looks like they've been wrapped up with
Mike,
torn pieces of Josh's clothing.
there's something out here.
Now, what's inside this bundle, you might be asking? Well, I'm going to show it to you. It's a little bit gory, but okay, here it is. I'll show you the scene where she actually opens it up.
Okay, I'm taking it away. I'm taking it away. all full of blood.
Okay, let's really take a look at what's inside the bundle. Taking a close examination, it appears to be quite a surprising amount of blood. I think perhaps some hair, and definitely a couple teeth in there. So evidently, the Blair Witch has been doing horrible things to Josh, and as evidence, it left behind pieces of him to essentially show that they're next. And the thing is, there's not a lot here, but in a way it's a microcosm for the entire film. A lot is implied with just a little. And it's amazing how much the film gets so much out of so little, and how the directors and the actors were able to get so much out of so little, from the budget to the improvised dialogue to the minimal use of props. It's really very impressive, and it's one of the reasons why I think this horror film is so good, because it shows you that you don't need a huge budget and lots of flashy special effects to be scary. You can just focus on the horror of the unknown, of what you don't understand, what you can barely comprehend, and what you don't see happening. That's horror.
You need help?
No, I don't need any help. I'm okay.
What happened?
Nothing happened. I'm just very hungry and I'm very tired. And I'm very scared and I just want to go home, okay?
Okay.
But I'm fine and we're both okay.
If I do have a real complaint, it's that Heather doesn't tell Mike what she found. That's a big of a pet peeve of mine, but I can sort of understand it. She's scared out of her mind. And now for the most infamous and well-known scene in the entire Blair Witch film. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to play it straight and let it all sink in, because it is incredibly effective. It feels genuine and real, and it is terrifying. Behold.
I just want to apologize to Mike's mom and Josh's mom and my mom. And I'm sorry to everyone. I was very naive. I am so sorry for everything that has happened. Because in spite of what Mike says now, it is my fault. Because it was my project. And I insisted. I insisted on everything. I insisted that we weren't lost. I insisted that we keep going. I insisted that we walk south. Everything had to be my way. And this is where we've ended up. And it's all because of me that we're here now. Hungry and cold and hunted. I love you, Mom. And Dad. I'm so sorry. I'm scared to close my eyes. scared to open them.
Holy shit. It's a house. Watch your step.
Yes, they've found Rustin Parr's house. That's right, the guy who killed all those children. Now, I know you might be thinking that, wait a minute, didn't you say earlier that the parents, burned the place down? Yes, Rustin Parr's house got burnt down after he was hanged because the parents were so furious with him killing their children. And yet here it is.
Where is he? Jesus.
We go upstairs.
I hear him. I hear him. I hear you. Josh! I'm going upstairs. Hear that? Hear that? Where is he? Where are you? Come on, Josh. I hear him downstairs. Come on, I hear him downstairs. Come on, Josh. Josh, Josh, is that you down there? Josh.
Now, what's going on? Well, there's multiple alternate endings, but they're all variations on this ending, which I'm just going to let it play in its entirety. Take a look. And that, my friends, is how the movie ends. On a deliberately ambiguous note, no real clue as to what's going on, only a faint hint that connects back to the original legend that started them on this documentary quest. And no, the directors have never actually given a full explanation on what it is that actually happened. They talked about some of the alternate ideas that they had, like perhaps showing the witch's hand on the wall or showing Mike levitating or something like that, but no, they decided to go with the simple one, which is, in all honesty, the best one. Just leaving him in the corner, head bowed like a kid, not moving, and then something happens to Heather. And then presumably something happens to Mike. Now, again, this all goes back to why I love this film so much. It does so much with so little. All it takes is the implication And that alone allows your imagination to fill in the blanks as to what it is that's going on. And I like that. A lot of horror comes from what we allow our imagination to cook up in our head, because what's in our heads is always going to be more horrifying to us than anything that can be put on a screen or in a book. And there is a brilliance in its simplicity. Yes, there's not a lot of gore. Yes, there's a lot of arguing. And yeah, you might not like the shaky cam. But if you can get past all that, this is a very suspenseful, atmospheric horror story. And I really, really like it. And I think it's one of the best horror films out there. And it's a codifier of an entire genre of horror films for a damn good reason. So if you get the chance, check it out. And happy Halloween, everyone.